Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another Sacred Mountain Battle Report. Today I'm going to be talking about my favorite Napoleonic game, LaSalle, version 2 by Sam Mustafa. Specifically though, I'm going to be talking about his Garrison rule on pages 88 through 90 and proposal that I have to change it mainly just for our club. And the reason I'm changing this is not due to that I think that Sam's rule is bad, it's just it would fit our terrain and our basing strategy a little bit better than his rule. Now, just to remind you, Sam's rule has much larger base sizes and many more miniatures per battalion. And our bases, you can see there, our single base is 1.5 inch by 1 inch, representing a company, and 4 companies per battalion. And so we use a lot fewer miniatures overall, and we've decided that our base width is going to be 1.5 inches. So there's in March, then mass, and then you can imagine what square formation would look like. So there's 4 definitions that I'm going to go over in this video. One is the definition of a town, definition of a building, definition of occupied, and definition of garrison. So here we have a town. This is by Total Battle Miniatures, makes these resin towns, and the base of this is actually a silicone rubber mold that I've mounted to masonite, and the buildings pull off as you can see, and you can see the footprints. So the town is defined by that circumscribed area terrain, and in it may be walls or other terrain features as well. And then a building is just that single building, like in this, for instance, is a church, or you can see that residential building right there that I just took off. And these can be rectangular or they can be square. Now, Mr. Mustafa said this was a town. That would be a full town, and all you could fit in there was a battalion. But since we're using our smaller base size and have these really nice terrain towns, I wanted to use them, and so that's the main reason for this rule change. Now here Sean Bean has just occupied, not garrisoned, but occupied this rectangular building, and for all intents and purposes that entire building footprint is their unit. And so this French old guard can come in and charge that unit, and that unit is considered, Sean Bean's 95th Rifles is now considered in poor formation, so they have a -4 in close combat, and those French are going to probably destroy Sean's unit because Sean's just trying to get into the building and get situated when this mass of French troops come in and charge him. Now, if the English Rifles would have tried to change formation with those French within 4 base widths of the footprint of the building, that would incur an interruption, because recall, the full building is its now its footprint, and so that would extend the footprint of their base and could potentially incur complications as a result. And let's say, for example, that French old guard that I'm not pointing at is within 4 base widths. They could charge into that now garrisoned building, but because they are now garrisoned, they are in a strong formation and would get a +1, and the charging unit, the unit of old guard French, are now considered to be in difficult terrain, and so they get a -1, so a net of a bonus / penalty of 2 to that total combat. Now, in a town, not a building, but a town, you can be in any formation that your bases allow. This is a unit in mass in the town, but recall that you can't have a unit in anything, infantry unit in anything but march or garrison to go into the footprint of a building. And this mass unit of mass infantry is considered an open ground in the town, and they would have would be an easy target from bombarding that cannon. Now that cannon, now they're in a poor formation, but they do have a cover save, and the cannons will shift down because they're in a cover, because they're occupying that building, but they're now volleying because of they're within 4 base widths of that building. So that's going to be hard on the 95th Rifles. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about moving through a town. So here the cannons can move through this town freely while they're limbered because their bases won't go through a footprint of a building. Whereas these cavalry, although they can be in the town, they won't be able to move through the center of town because their bases are too wide and they just won't fit all the way through that town without overlapping a building. So if it fits, it sits, and if it doesn't fit, you can't go in. You know, maybe the buildings are a little wider and they could go through and march. But in this town's case, cavalry just can't get in and through that town, and they're going to have to bypass. Now here's another example, just to pound this point home, a shooting example. Here, let's say that residential building above the 95th Rifles is occupied and garrisoned, and the cannons are going to try to bombard it because it's out of 4 base widths. They can bombard that from across the table, and that whole building is considered the unit. So if you can see it from across the table, you can shoot it, and you could potentially bombard that unit inside that building. Recalling that they will get a cover save, so the cannons will have to shoot or shift down when bombarding. Okay, last example. Let's say you have Sean Bean's 95th Rifles marching down this alley, and they just ran into a French Old Guard battalion, turning the corner also in march. And so in this case, you'll use the bridge assault rules that are outlined in Mustafa's version 2 of LaSalle in the advanced rules section. Now, if bases would allow, those French could potentially be in mass formation in the center of town and really give old Sean Bean a run for his money, and could charge them in a poor formation. Sean would be caught unawares in a -4. But the French would not be able to be in mass formation if any portion of their bases overlapped a building. They could be in march formation and go into a building, and then that building would be considered occupied. All right. Hey, thanks everybody for tuning in to another Sacred Mountain Battle Report. If you have any comments or questions or ideas of ways that we could make this house rule better for our terrain, give me a shout in the comments. I don't know if the group will agree to do this, but we might give it a shot for one game and see what we think. I think it's simpler and more intuitive, and I just think it works better with our miniatures. All right, see you next time. Hopefully we'll have a LaSalle battle report for you next weekend.